They say nothing is more devastating than losing your child, but worse is never knowing how your child disappeared. On a scorching July day in Atlanta, amid a sea of people celebrating the city's biggest summer music festival, 6-year-old Dakota Taylor vanished in just 5 short minutes. Dakota, with her hair in twin braids and a bright smile in her yellow polka dot dress. That's the last image anyone remembers. When Monique, her mother, returned from her volunteer shift at the medical tent, her older daughter, Aaliyah, was frozen in place, eyes wide with panic. Scanning the crowd, Dakota was gone. The family screamed her name until their voices gave out, but the pounding music from the main stage drowned out everything. No one heard a thing. No one saw a thing. The first hours of searching quickly turned into days, then weeks, then years. Every trace vanished as if Dakota had never existed. Their tight-knit community was left drained and heartbroken. Atlanta kept moving forward, but one question remained unanswered. How can a child disappear in the middle of a crowd without leaving a single trace? When she was little, Dakota Taylor was the only ray of sunshine in a life that had already seen too much loss for her mother, Monique Taylor. Monique was born and raised in East Point, Georgia, a racially diverse community where injustice against black families lingered in every story, every missed opportunity, every suspicious glance in upscale stores. She grew up watching those around her work twice as hard just to get half the recognition. But Monique pushed through every barrier, becoming a nurse at a community hospital, where neighbors affectionately called her the angel in scrubs. It was there she met her husband, Terrence, a bus driver with a warm smile. They fell in love quickly, married, and welcomed Aaliyah. Then Dakota. But before Dakota even turned 3, Terrence was killed in a car accident, leaving Monique to raise their 2 young daughters on her own. It was Dakota's bright smile and Aaliyah's fierce spirit that carried her through each day. By the time Dakota turned 6, things were finally starting to feel stable again. Monique signed up to volunteer at the festival's first aid station, and Aaliyah was tasked with watching her little sister to their friends and neighbors. The Taylor family was a symbol of strength, Black mother and her 2 daughters, walking hand in hand through every storm. But fate can be cruel. In one fleeting moment, it took away the last fragile hope they had. Aaliyah was just 14 at the time, a teenager with dreams of joining the high school cheer team, a love for hip-hop dance, and a place in the top 5 of her class. She was her mother's pride and joy, but everything crumbled the day Dakota disappeared, for years afterward. Aaliyah lay awake at night, hearing her mother sob through the wall, haunted by the same tormenting thoughts. If only I'd watched more closely. If I hadn't looked at my phone for those few seconds. The what-ifs never left her, echoing from one year into the next. As she grew up, Aaliyah avoided photos. She couldn't stand on a stage without feeling that guilt pressing on her shoulders. She went on to study social work in college, pouring herself into helping families of missing or abused children, trying to bring healing to others when she couldn't heal herself. People in the community admired her strength, but could see the quiet pain behind her eyes. Older folks would whisper, "That child grew up too fast," living with a wound that never closed. Every year during the summer festival, Aaliyah and her mother still handed out flyers with Dakota's face. The world may have moved on, but they never stopped hoping. East Point, a small city just outside Atlanta, is full of vibrant neighborhoods. The smell of barbecue in the air, bustling hair salons, and shadowy alleyways locals avoid after dark. At the time of Dakota's disappearance, the summer festival was the biggest event of the year, drawing thousands from across the state for music, food, and street games. The main park had 3 entrances, each leading to different streets. The crowd was dense. The bass from the main stage rattled the ground, and the chaos created a perfect cover for anyone with dark intentions. Yet this was also a community known for its unity. People shared meals, helped each other in hard times, and fought for justice, especially for Black children often overlooked by the media when they go missing. After Dakota vanished, hundreds of volunteers from across Georgia joined the search. Local organizations raised money for posters, and streetball teams launched the "Seek Find Dakota" campaign that went viral online. But as time passed, the news coverage faded, and the community faced a terrifying truth. If it could happen to Dakota, it could happen to their own kids too. That silence, slow, suffocating, drowned out the cries of the Taylor family for 15 long years. That afternoon, the sun blazed down on the dry yellow grass of Atlanta's Central Park. Thousands poured in, and the music from 3 main stages blended into a chaotic roar that filled the air. Stalls selling balloons, cotton candy, and lemonade were packed with people. Monique, busy tending to an elderly woman with low blood pressure at the festival's medical tent, kept glancing back now and then, scanning the crowd for her daughters each time. She saw Aaliyah still standing there, holding Dakota's handsome, times leaning down to whisper something that made the little girl burst out laughing. But around 3:15 p.m., in the exact moment Monique bent over to check the woman's blood pressure, Aaliyah let go of Dakota's hand for just a few seconds to grab a tissue and wipe her sweat. When she looked up, her sister was gone. At first, Aaliyah thought Dakota might have ducked behind the nearby ice cream truck, but when she called out and got no answer, panic began to set in. She started circling the area, searching. Within less than 5 minutes, full-blown fear took over. Dakota was nowhere to be found. Her cries of Dakota were swallowed by the music, rising and falling in desperation. Aaliyah began to cry, running and shouting, pushing through clusters of people, mumbling apologies to those she bumped into. But no one helped. In that sweltering crowd of thousands, fear clawed at Aaliyah's mind like a wild animal. When Monique heard her eldest daughter's voice crackle through the public announcement system, she immediately dropped what she was doing and ran into the crowd, seeing Aaliyah's pale face, sweat-matted hair, and wild eyes. Monique instantly knew something terrible had happened. They began scouring the area near the main stage, shouting Dakota's name, showing her photo to anyone who would look. A woman selling baked goods remembered seeing a man in an orange shirt and black baseball cap crouching down to talk to a little girl who might have been Dakota. But when police followed up, her memory was shaky. She wasn't sure if it was Dakota or another child, not with the chaos of the crowd. A balloon vendor said he saw a small child being lifted into a white van, parked near the side entrance of the park, but he hadn't noticed the license plate, too busy packing up to avoid the traffic jam. Police didn't arrive until about 45 minutes after Dakota went missing. The festival was still in full swing, and their patrol car was stuck in the dense flow of people within hours. The scene had been trampled by tens of thousands of footsteps, erasing whatever fragile clues might be remained. All that was left behind was a single pink hair tie Dakota's lying near the parkside gate, sticky with melted candy. That was it. Not enough for police to declare it an abduction, not enough to say she'd wandered off. But Monique and Aaliyah knew, deep in their bones, Dakota would never leave her mother and sister on her own in the days that followed. News of Dakota's disappearance aired on local stations. Flyers were posted across neighborhoods. Neighbors, teachers, Aaliyah's classmates, and their parents joined the search, but with each passing day, hope thinned. The search spread to the outskirts into the woods, abandoned lots, and even the old stormwater tunnels under the city. A special task force was formed, but no working surveillance cameras had captured Dakota during that time. One ATM camera once, their biggest lead, had been reported broken earlier that morning. The media ran a few short segments, but within days, other stories took over: protests, politics, breaking news. Dakota's face slowly faded from the headlines. Monique took unpaid leave from work and searched every day. Aaliyah dropped out of school for a month, later transferring to avoid the whispers and pitiful stares for both mother and daughter. Each day felt like a life sentence without end. Years later, the memory of that fateful afternoon remains seared in Aaliyah's mind. The smell of grilled sausages, the joyful cheers, and that hollow space where her sister once stood. Every time she closes her eyes, she sees Dakota's smile spinning in slow motion before vanishing into the crowd. 15 years later, on a gray March morning, a thick fog blanketed the Atlanta sky. Damp air seeped through every crack, clinging to everything. Orlando James, 42, a gardener working at an abandoned mansion near an old quarry on the city's outskirts, was trimming overgrown brush when his shears struck something small and solid. The jolt caught his attention. A glint of silver peeked out from the fallen leaves, like someone had just tried to hide it. Bending down, Orlando discovered a tiny silver star-shaped earring, stained with a faint trace of dried blood barely noticeable unless you looked closely. Years of experience told him this could be something serious. He immediately called local police. Within hours, yellow tape surrounded the scene. Investigators arrived. Forensics teams collected soil, leaves, and took the earring back to the lab for analysis. Word spread quickly through the community. Monique got the call from the lead detective on Dakota's case. His voice dropped as he said, "We've found something that looks just like the earring Dakota was wearing the day she went missing." Monique's legs gave out beneath her. She collapsed to the kitchen floor. In that instant, the past rushed back. Dakota's 6th birthday morning, when Monique gave her those silver star earrings, her daughter had wrapped her arms around her neck, grinning brightly, promising she'd wear them forever. The discovery of the earring sparked both hope and fear for the Taylor family and the entire East Point community. Police rushed to test the dried blood for DNA 48 hours later. The results left everyone stunned. The sample matched a lock of Dakota's hair the family had provided years ago. The blood was hers. It confirmed that Dakota had, at some point, been at least near that quarry. More importantly, soil analysis around the earring showed recent disturbance less than 2 weeks old. Investigators theorized someone might have held onto the earring for 15 years and then deliberately planted it to reignite the investigation. Monique was torn. How does it just show up after all these years? If Dakota's alive, could she be leaving a sign for help? But Aaliyah had a darker fear. What if the person who took her is playing games trying to show us they still have her? Local media jumped on the story. The public was once again in uproar. Messages of support flooded in some hopeful Dakota was still alive. But along with them came cruel rumors. Conspiracy theorists accused Monique of faking it for donations. The stress plunged her into another emotional spiral as police combed through old records. A long-forgotten detail resurfaced. An early witness claimed to see Dakota lifted into a black SUV. But now, a new witness emerged, Jada Williams. 29, a cashier at a corner store near the side entrance of the park. She stated with certainty that on the day Dakota vanished, she saw a tall man in an orange shirt and black cap lift a girl who looked just like Dakota into a white Vanish, an SUV. Jada remembered clearly the man gave the child a red lollipop just before they disappeared. That detail aligned with a vague account from the pastry vendor years ago, but it completely contradicted the original SUV theory. Police again reviewed the only nearby ATM camera. Once again, they confirmed it had been malfunctioning that day. Two conflicting theories emerged. One camp believed Jada, convinced the kidnapper used a white van. Others clung to the SUV report. The contradictions only deepened public frustration. Many questioned why so little clarity existed after 15 years and began criticizing police for their early missteps. With the earring and this new testimony, the lead detective reopened Dakota's case in full. The quarry, the abandoned house nearby, and the list of past residents were all re-examined. One name stood out: Curtis Hayes. 58, a mechanic who once lived near the Taylor family. He had occasionally babysat Dakota when Monique worked night shifts. In 2007, Hayes had been accused of inappropriate contact with a neighbor's child, but the case was dropped when the main witness recanted. That file had long been buried. Hayes moved away shortly after Dakota disappeared. But now, investigators discovered he had returned to Atlanta in recent months, renting an apartment just 15 minutes from the quarry. While there was no direct evidence yet, the timing of his return raised alarms. When Monique heard his name, she nearly broke down. She had once trusted Hayes. The thought crushed her. If he's the one I left my daughter with, I'll never forgive myself. Aaliyah, determined not to let another lead slip away, went to the quarry herself. The place was eerily quiet, in a rotting wooden shack nearby. She found a few old toys, threadbare stuffed animals, a child's bowl with yellow ducklings printed on it. Everything was coated in dust, but fresh footprints near the doorway suggested someone had been there recently. After exploring the quarry on her own, Aaliyah made a bold decision. She had to confront Curtis Hayes herself. She couldn't wait for the police to crawl through their procedures anymore. One late afternoon, Aaliyah stood outside his rundown apartment. The neighborhood was bleak, shattered windows, graffiti-stained walls, a heavy silence that seemed to swallow the air. When she knocked, Curtis answered the door, looking surprised. He was older than she remembered, graying hair, a slight stoop, but his eyes were still sharp. "Aaliyah, it's been a long time you've grown," he said, though the smile never reached his eyes. Inside the cluttered, smoke-filled room, Aaliyah spotted a newspaper on the table. On the front page was a photo of Dakota and an article about the recently discovered earring. She steadied her voice and asked, "Why did you come back to Atlanta after all these years?" Curtis gave a strained smile and said he wanted to be near home before he died. But when Aaliyah asked directly, "Have you seen Dakota again?" he froze. His expression darkened. "What are you implying?" he snapped, voice low and tight. The air grew thick with tension. Then Aaliyah noticed something, a keychain on the table, another silver star earring, just like Dakota's, except the star pointed downward. Her heart pounded. Before she could say anything, Curtis slammed the door in her face. From inside came a raspy warning, "Leave. Don't come back." Aaliyah fled the building, mind spinning. She called her mother and described the second earring. Monique was silent for a long time, then broke into sobs. She couldn't believe the man who once rocked Dakota to sleep while she worked night shifts could possibly be involved in her child's disappearance. Meanwhile, a new report came in to the police. A traffic cam 2 miles from where the earring was found had captured footage of an old brown pickup truck, similar to the one Curtis used to drive. But the plate was blurry, untraceable. As the clip leaked online, the East Point community erupted, within the black community. People split into 2 camps. Some believed Curtis was a predator hiding in plain sight. Others argued he was being railroaded, a scapegoat because of past rumors and a flawed justice system. Aaliyah felt like someone was pulling strings behind the scenes. The earring felt like bait designed to ignite a manhunt without enough evidence to convict. Who could be orchestrating something this calculated, she wondered. She started doubting everything: the police, the new witness, even those who once supported her mother. The next day, the forensic team revisited the shack near the quarry. Under a child's pillow, they found a single strand of hair. DNA analysis revealed it didn't belong to Dakota. It belonged to an unidentified adult not listed in any national criminal database. That revelation gave weight to the theory that the entire scene had been staged. Police moved to arrest Curtis on suspicion, hoping to press for answers. During interrogation, Curtis maintained his innocence. "I left Atlanta right after Dakota disappeared. I didn't take her. I never went near that quarry," he said, when shown a photo of the earring on his keychain. Curtis claimed he found it on the sidewalk and kept it because it looked familiar. His story was shaky at best. But then something unnerving happened. A security camera outside the precinct caught a brown pickup truck idling nearby for 15 minutes before pulling away. Someone was watching Curtis, watching the investigation unfold. It only deepened the mystery. Monique, already emotionally exhausted, began to spiral. She didn't know who to trust anymore. She didn't know what was real. But Aaliyah refused to give up. She contacted an attorney to protect her family in case they were dragged into unfounded accusations. Online, the Justice for Dakota movement surged again. Photos of the missing girl flooded social media, along with messages demanding answers, but hateful comments crept in. "This family is hiding something. 15 years, and now they want donations." Monique stopped leaving the house. She feared the stairs, feared being recognized. At night, she sat at a small altar beneath Dakota's photo, whispering apologies into the silence for letting it all become this chaotic. Meanwhile, Aaliyah pieced together the clues: the pink hair tie from years ago, the sudden reappearance of the earring, the broken ATM camera that just happened to be offline. Everything seemed too neatly placed, like someone had intimate knowledge of the old case files and was manipulating the narrative. For the first time in 15 years, Aaliyah decided she would stop running from her fear. She made a vow: no matter how dark the truth might be, she would bring it into the light, even if she had to walk through the shadows alone. When news broke that Curtis had been arrested, the once united neighborhood that had rallied behind Dakota's disappearance began to fracture. One group, convinced he was the monster behind it all, gathered in front of his apartment holding banners demanding justice. They held up Dakota's photo, chanting her name, calling Curtis a monster. But another group, many of them elders who'd known Curtis growing up, believed he was innocent, a scapegoat in a case lacking real evidence. Arguments erupted between neighbors, friends, even family members. Social media overflowed with accusations, blame, wild theories. What began as the story of a missing girl had now spiraled into a public battleground about race, justice, and whether law enforcement truly pursued cases involving missing black children with the same urgency. In the midst of it all, Monique was unraveling. She could no longer step outside. Someone shattered her window with a rock. An anonymous letter arrived, filled with hateful words. Aaliyah moved her mother to stay with a trusted friend, away from the prying eyes and judgment. But even in the new apartment, every passing car, every unexpected knock made Monique jump. One night, she whispered to Aaliyah, trembling, "I'm afraid Dakota might come back, but not as the child I once knew." Then, in the chaos, a flicker of hope emerged. Police received lab results on a small piece of fabric found in the quarry shack. It matched the material of the dress Dakota was wearing the day she disappeared. More importantly, the blood on it was fresher than what had been found on the earring, more than a few months old. The possibility that Dakota was still alive surged through the community. Police expanded their search to a 20-mile radius around the quarry, teaming up with rescue crews, K-9 units, and local hunters who knew the land. Public opinion shifted. Criticism gave way to shared resolve. People posted Dakota's photo again with the hashtag #StillSearchingForDakota. Volunteer groups brought food and water to the search teams, but Aaliyah noticed something odd. Search teams near the quarry found nothing, yet in farther, newer zones. They began discovering clue-symbol footprints, recently manufactured baby food wrappers. Aaliyah started to suspect someone was anticipating the search, path-planting clues just ahead of investigators. The idea chilled her. Was someone orchestrating this like a twisted game, toying with the family and police alike? Over a week into the expanded search, they made a startling discovery beneath the basement of a long-abandoned brick warehouse, 5 miles from the quarry. Searchers uncovered a hidden bunker. Inside were small household items, a child's toothbrush, unopened formula cans, a pink cloth embroidered with a D. Everything pointed to someone having lived there with a child. But when DNA tests came back, they delivered another blow-no trace of Dakota, only the DNA of an unidentified adult. Hope gave way to doubt once more. If Dakota had been there, why was there no genetic trace? Was someone staging the entire scene? Curtis was released due to lack of evidence. But then he vanished, disappearing from his residence without a word. Was he fleeing because he was innocent and scared, or hiding something? Aaliyah and Monique returned home, forced to face a crushing possibility. For 15 years, they had lived clinging to hope. But maybe Dakota was gone, or worse, maybe she was still out there, being held somewhere no one could see. That night, as darkness settled over Atlanta, Aaliyah sat quietly at the table, running her fingers over Dakota's old pink hair tie. She whispered into the silence, "Where are you? Do you still remember me outside?" The streetlight flickered like a fading breath. An old flyer with Dakota's face fluttered along the sidewalk, ghost-like in the wind, and the Atlanta night seemed to swallow every last cry for help after days of exhausting searches. Aaliyah and her mother returned to their temporary apartment in East Point. They sat across from each other at a small kitchen table, their dinner long gone cold. Monique's hands trembled as she clutched Dakota's old pink hair, tie-like. If she let go, even for a second, all hope would vanish. Aaliyah looked at her mother and saw more than sorrow in her eyes. There was fire, a quiet determination. No matter how long it takes, no matter where she is, I won't stop searching. Aaliyah knew those words weren't just about Dakota. They were also about Monique herself, a lifeline pulling her back from the edge of despair. The next morning, Aaliyah printed hundreds of new flyers with Dakota's photo from when she was 6, big round eyes, that innocent smile, and the words still searching beneath. With a few close friends, she posted them throughout the neighborhood on bus stops, store windows, barbershops, anywhere people gathered. Throughout the day, elderly neighbors, young mothers, and high school kids stopped and stared. Some nodded, their eyes full of empathy. A few held the posters gently, looked at them for a long moment, and softly said, "I hope she's safe." In that moment, Aaliyah realized that even amid division and doubt, the community still had hearts willing to care, to stand with a grieving family. That night, unable to sleep, Aaliyah spread every old case file across the floor: photos, notes, witness reports. She pieced them together like an impossible puzzle. Every clue felt both right and wrong. Like someone had crafted the mystery to keep them lost, the earring appearing too late, the recent fabric scrap, the van versus SUV contradiction, the conveniently broken ATM camera. The deeper she went, the more certain she became someone had orchestrated this. A hidden hand guiding the chaos, planting confusion, manipulating their pain. She placed Dakota's photo in the center of the floor and stared into the eyes of the little girl frozen in time. What would Dakota look like now? 15 years later, would her hair be longer, her face older? Would she still remember her mother, her sister, or had those memories been erased? The questions burned inside her, but they were also the flame that kept her going. She looked up through the window. That Atlanta night sky was filled with stars, each one flickering like a whisper from Dakota M. still out here somewhere. Dakota's story isn't just the tragedy of one family. It's a reflection of a harsh truth. Cases of missing Black children are too often forgotten, fading from the news, overlooked by the system. Families like the Taylors aren't just fighting to find their loved ones. They're fighting against bias, silence, and a system that too often fails them. That's why we made this video, to make sure Dakota's voice, Monique's voice, Aaliyah's voice aren't drowned out. Wherever you are, we ask, share this story. If you've ever waited for news that never came, if you know what it feels like to be separated by injustice, comment me too. Let the Taylor family know they're not alone. Let them know people still believe in miracles. And if you've seen Dakota, or think you might have any information, please call the number on your screen. Because maybe, just maybe, one small lead could finally bring her home and end a 15-year nightmare, bringing justice and light back to this community.